that goes on because there are a lot of questions. Real quickly, that was a huge win for the Caps. You know, there were games played this weekend. There were things that are current, not 5 years from now things. What a hit by Tom Wilson early in the third period, set up that game-tying goal. Caps with a big third period, really, for the first time in this series, and they win 5-2 to take a commanding 3-1 lead in the series. They get an extra day before Game 5 Wednesday night at home, but really a big win considering that, you know, for a while down 2-1 and 0 for 5 on the power play, which included a two-man advantage for about a minute and a half as well. But they came through in the third period. That hit by Tom Wilson was a game changer for sure. I don't know if it should have been penalized or not. I'm not enough of a hockey guy to know. I know his rep precedes him, and there are a lot of people that thought it should have been or could have been, or they were surprised it wasn't. But man, what a game-changing play. More on the Caps' big win later on in the show. So the NFL draft is over. Washington had 5 picks going in. They didn't make one trade, not one. All weekend long, they drafted 5 players. The class, like last year's class, is very athletic. We'll get into what they got and what we think a little bit this hour. But Cooley, you'll hear from him on the show. He broke down Josh Connerly Jr. And did that on my podcast on Friday. So I'll play about 15 minutes of that. He likes the player a lot. Ben Standig will join us today on the show at 12. Yeah, what a crazy weekend. Max is with me. I mean, I watched a lot of hoops. I'm not going to lie to you. Certainly watched the Caps. Day 3 of the draft, I had it on. I was certainly following what Washington was doing. I'll tell you, of the 3 players selected on day 3, there is one that I really like a lot, and I'll get to him in a bit. But let's start with, you know, the RFK announcement that is upcoming at 11 a.m. It looks like a go. Now, we learned this, about a week ago when NBC4 broke the news. 2030 is the target. This will be a translucent dome stadium, we're pretty sure. I'm sure we'll hear more about the details of what the stadium will look like during the 11 a.m. press conference. There are still hurdles. You know, this is going to be a very positive, upbeat press conference, and this is a big part of what the mayor has been trying to accomplish. Mayor Bowser has done something here over the last 6 months that will be lasting for her legacy. Even though there are more important things, there aren't things that are higher profile or higher exposure than stadiums. Keeping Washington's NBA and NHL team in Chinatown with $515 million of renovation commitment, and then getting the football team back to D.C. after 27 seasons in Maryland with potentially $850+ million of private and public and taxpayer commitment will certainly be something that she will be remembered for. But there are hurdles. This isn't going to be a done deal when you hear it. I'm sure they will get asked about where the city council is. 12 members currently because of the Ward 8 issue. So they're going to still need 7 out of 12 votes for it to pass. You still have, as it's been explained a couple of times on this show with various guests, you're still going to have zoning challenges. You're going to have the NIMBYs, the not in my neighborhood people. There is a push for a public vote on the ballot for primary season. Those votes typically, when they're voted on by the public, never go well, typically for billionaire owners in cities who want taxpayer dollars for stadiums. So there is still stuff that needs to happen, but it got to at least this point where the city, A, got the land, B, they got a deal done with the team. This was always, I think, the odds-on favorite. Once the land, because they could have done nothing without having the ability to have an extended, 100-year lease on the RFK site, the 170-plus acres. And you have a deal between the city, which the city will end up funding a significant part of the infrastructure. The team will build the stadium and the surrounding retail, mixed-use, residential as well, and will benefit from that, I am sure. $3 billion is essentially going to be the price tag, and it looks like, at least for now, and the odds would favor this, that the council will pass, and that, those that will push back on this in terms of using taxpayer dollars or using that big parcel of land for a sports stadium, ultimately, I do think we have the news that we've wanted for a long time. And getting Washington's football team, the Redskins, for all of those years. The Commanders did not play at RFK Stadium, just to be clear. There's been a lot of references to bringing the Commanders home. It's bringing the Washington football franchise home, because the Washington football franchise was the resident of D.C. from 1961 through 1996. Bringing the Commanders to their first home in D.C. is a more accurate way of putting it, but we can move on from that. But yeah, it's 5 years away. And what's ironic about all of this is that there is great, I think, happiness among the team's fans. Now, not everybody's thrilled with this. I'm a DC resident, and there are many DC residents that don't want this. They don't want their taxpayer dollars going to this. But in terms of the team's fan base, overwhelmingly, every poll, every survey, including the team's own internal surveys, have indicated for a long time what we've all known intuitively, and that is the home of this football team should be in the city, and that RFK site in particular. Not that it'll look anything like what it used to look like, nor do we want it to, really. Come on. It is 2025 and 2030 when the stadium will open. And there will be massive events at that stadium from 2030 on. I think, once this gets done, we're 10 years or less away from a Super Bowl. Yeah, you'll get a Super Bowl as long as you have the requisite capacity of 65,000 plus, which it'll have. I don't think it'll be much more than 65,000, and a dome stadium in a cold weather city. They'll never do an outdoor cold weather city Super Bowl again. Not after what happened at Giant Stadium when the weather was cold, but it was clear, but less than 12 hours after the game, they had a foot of snow on the ground. They'll never risk their biggest day for that, especially since by the time we get to a Super Bowl in, say, 2032 or 2033, it'll be happening even later than the Super Bowls happen right now. But the irony of this happening now is that the experience in Landover over 27 years was brutal, except for the last year. And it was brutal first and foremost because a losing team most of the time played in that stadium. Had Dan Snyder never purchased the team, and there had been a decent owner, a competent owner that had owned the team all of those years at FedEx Field and produced even a modest amount of winning, a normal amount of winning, because the NFL is designed for every franchise to win occasionally, to have a really good season or two occasionally, to be in the postseason and maybe even win a game or two occasionally. Our franchise didn't do that for 26 years, from 97 through the 2023 season. It couldn't, because it was so poorly run. It was the clown show of all clown shows in sports. And if the team had had winning teams, it would have produced some winning memories and some big-time games, and we wouldn't have hated it as much as we did. But when you combined the losing and the embarrassing losing with a stadium that wasn't very attractive, nor was RFK, with some of the worst traffic issues that they never could figure out. And part of that is just our city and the traffic issues it has, and the Beltway, where when you have a ton of traffic and it seems like it never ceases, no matter what time of day or night, no matter what day of the week. Seems like Saturday or Sunday. It doesn't matter if there's a game or not a game. There's traffic. But everything about that stadium was unpleasant. But it started with the team. The team wasn't any good. The team was an embarrassment. The stadium became a mark for opposing fans to move in and take over. That started 2007, 2008. Never forget the night the Steelers fans came in for Sunday Night Football and literally took the stadium over. That wasn't a 50-50 deal. That was an 80-20 deal, one way. 80-20, 80 Steelers fans, 20 Washington fans. But it'll be nice to get away from it. But the irony is, after all of those years, now this team looks poised to go on a run. We haven't had a run since the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. There hasn't been a run. There hasn't been a several-year period where the team's been a contender. Teams coming off 14 regular season wins, 16 overall out of, their 21, games played, 20 games played, 14 wins, 6 losses, and an NFC championship loss to the Eagles, in which they were 60 minutes away from advancing to the Super Bowl. They have a quarterback for the first time who looks to be elite. These last 5 seasons, the 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29 seasons at FedEx Field, Northwest Field, the stadium in Landover, may be the greatest run of the stadium's history, just as it's about to close. We will likely have a lot of really good memories as fans of this team over the final 5 years. I mean, what's the over-under on playoff games that'll be played there? Only 4 playoff games over 27 seasons were played in Landover. There was a game against Detroit after the 99 season, wild card game. There was a game that was infamous in January of 2013, RG3's injury game against Seattle. There was a game against Green Bay after the 2015 season. Aaron Rodgers came in and beat Washington. And then remember, and this is the one I forgot when we were talking about this about a week ago, is that they had a home game, not that there were any fans there, in 2020 during COVID, when Washington, as a 7-9 division winner, hosted Tampa. 4 playoff games in all of those years. 1-3 in terms of the record in those playoff games. What's the over-under on playoff games at Northwest Field over the final 5 years? It's got to be 5.5, 6, 6.5. They're going to play home playoff games. They're going to play playoff games. We know that. Hopefully, plenty of playoff games. There is a real possibility over the final 5 seasons of this stadium, they'll have 5 times the number of meaningful and memorable games than they had in the 27 years that preceded the final 5. But this is really good news. It's a long way off, but we'll get to watch the progress together. And let's hope, the hurdles are cleared. I would assume that there is great confidence, and we'll hear that this morning at 11, that they can get the city council to pass this, that they can get the proper zoning, that they can make the pitch, which they have to do. They're going to have to pitch how good this is for the city, the resurrection of that plot of land in particular, which has been a blight. It's been sitting there vacant for so long. And yet, within 2 to 3 blocks of that neighborhood are beautiful neighborhoods and very nice areas. And so they're going to turn something, hopefully, that isn't pretty into something that's great for the city. I'm excited about that as a resident of DC, to see maybe what was done in Chinatown by Abe Poland be accomplished by Josh Harris and this mayor at the RFK site. But it'll be exciting. We're 5 years away from it, but a big announcement, and I'm sure a lot of questions hopefully answered at 11 a.m. Again, we'll carry that live on the show. All right. I want to come back and talk a little bit about the draft from over the weekend because I know that's important to many of you. We'll go through the 4 picks that have been made since we last did a show here. But on the way out of this segment, there's one of my all-time favorite sort of beginnings of a game at RFK Stadium that I've played so many times on this show over the years. It's one that's available on YouTube. The whole game is. In 1986, Washington and the New York Giants played a game in December of that year at RFK Stadium. They were the 2 best teams in the league. This was for first place in the NFC East, which would lead to eventually home field advantage throughout the postseason. Now, this was the year the Giants went on to win the Super Bowl, led by Lawrence Taylor in his MVP season. But this gives you a sense of the stadium, the importance of it, the games that were played. This was the league's, not the division, not the conferences, the league's biggest game of the year. And this is how it was introed by Pat Summerall.
Offensive line is one of football's best, but today their reputation will be challenged by Lawrence Taylor and a fired-up New York defense. The Giants are confidently riding the crest of a 6-game winning streak. And with the right call from Phil Simms, they hope to roll a 7 today. The Giants also face some stiff challenges today. First, their defense must contain Washington's fleet receivers, like Gary Clark. And their unheralded pass blockers will have to contend with Dexter Manley, one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Manley relishes the spotlight, and today it shines brightly in the season's biggest game. Joe Morris ran the Giants to victory in their first meeting, but today's rematch is at RFK Stadium, where the Skins are hard to beat and where tickets are impossible to find. CBS Sports presents the National Football League. Today it's the New York Giants against the Redskins of Washington, live from RFK Stadium, sold out for the 157th consecutive time. And believe me, there is no place to play, no more enthusiastic setup than RFK.
Second down and 1 for the Hokies. Pop Watson in his first start. Takes the snap, play fake. Looks to throw. Fires it deep down the field. He's got his man Lane in stride to the 20, to the 10, 5. Touchdown, Tech. It's a 66-yard touchdown pass. And the Hokies, Pop Watson, throws a home run ball all the way to Jaylen Lane.
Jaylen Lane, wide receiver and punt returner. Yeah, and a really good punt returner. Out of Virginia Tech on day 3, 4th round, pick number 128. I'll give you my thoughts on the draft here coming up. This from Oscar. Oscar just wrote me, Kevin, you got me again. Hearing the voices of John Madden and Pat Summerall at RFK Stadium is nostalgia on steroids. Where can I listen to that again? Well, you can just download the Odyssey app and listen to the beginning of the show after the show. But all of those games, a lot of those games are just available on YouTube, like the actual broadcast, the CBS broadcast of some of the biggest games Washington's ever played are just, they're there on YouTube. This from Alan. Kevin, spine tingled hearing the Summerall Madden RFK highlights. Wow, I can still hear it. I can still see it. I can still smell it. Yeah, Alan, I can too. Like right now, if I focus, I can smell exactly what it smelled like when you walked into RFK Stadium. And yeah, you can feel it. You can see it. I think some of the cool moments, walking up some of those ramps, and our seats were in the upper level. We were in section 513, row 13. So we weren't at the very top, but we were much closer to the top than, the bottom. And we were at about the 10-yard line behind the Skins bench. That's where our seats were. And walking up those ramps, and occasionally when you would walk by one of the entrance, into the stadium, and you could see the field and you could see the players, that was something incredibly exciting. Not to mention, all of the smells of the stadium, but then all of the smells of just thinking about, smoke. Like, it was pipe smoke back then. It was obviously cigarette smoke. And of course, there was the occasional whiff of weed in the stadium long before it was legalized. But yeah, Alan, I have the same sort of recall in terms of some of the more important senses that we use. And I think a lot of us that spent a lot of time in that stadium for games can feel it and see it and smell it, as you said, like you can as well. It will smell differently, I am sure, because there will be the new stadium smell, which is a great smell. I don't even know what I'm talking about. But we're 5 years away from it. Lots of things to get through, but it should be exciting. And again, we're going to carry the press conference with the mayor, with Josh Harris, Washington's owner, and the commissioner will be there as well, Roger Goodell. All right. The draft since we last talked. Obviously, Washington selected Josh Connerly Jr. at number 29 in the first round, despite many offers, according to Adam Peters, to trade back. They clearly liked the player. They clearly wanted the player. The offensive line depth in the draft wasn't there. And so when you got to the end of the first round, there were teams looking to snag their offensive tackle or offensive guard before the really good ones and the ones worthy of a first-round grade got picked. Washington decided to stick. And Josh Connerly Jr., more likely than not, will be the team's starting right tackle when we get to the beginning of the regular season. Is it possible he's not ready? Sure. And in that case, Andrew Wiley or Brandon Coleman will be the starting right tackle. But that was the first pick. We spent a lot of time on Friday talking about that. After that, Washington stuck at every spot where they were scheduled to pick going into the draft. Number 61 in the second round, number 128 in the fourth round, number 205 in the sixth round, and 245 in the seventh round. The second round pick, Trey Amos, corner from Ole Miss. is considered to be, by a lot of people, maybe the best value pick for Washington in terms of where they got him at 61 in the second round and how high he had been projected. He was projected as high as the middle of the first round, but an average projection of late first round, and Washington got him very late in the second round. This was a player who was a starting corner at Ole Miss for just a year, played at Louisiana first, then transferred to Bama, played behind Terrion Arnold, played behind, what's-his-face, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and moved to Ole Miss after Nick Saban called it quits and they brought in Kalen DeBoer. And he had his true breakout season last year, an SEC best 16 defended passes. He is incredibly athletic. He's got good size at 6'1", 195. And this is a guy that can play in a lot of different ways defensively. He can play press man. He can play really good zone coverage. This is considered by most to be, in terms of where they got him, the best value pick. No one had Trey Amos going 61 in the second round. Now, we talked about this a lot going into the draft. This was a draft where picks 5 through 50 or 6 through 60 or 7 through 70, whatever, big gap you want to sort of take from the analysts, was a draft in which there wasn't a lot of difference, among the 60 to 70 players. In terms of the corners in this draft, you had Travis Hunter, Will Johnson had an injury, Jahdae Barron went, Maxwell Hairston both went in the first round, and then it was about what would happen next. And Washington had an opportunity for a guy that had, been mocked ahead of Jahdae Barron and Maxwell Hairston in several mocks. It's a defensive playmaker. It's a defensive spot. I'm going to say this a lot between now and the time we've seen these guys actually play in an NFL game for an NFL team, that you don't know and I don't know because they don't even know. Now, there are players occasionally where you do know, but they usually reside at the very top of the draft in terms of the true, deep down, test somebody with truth serum about what they know about these players when they get to the next level. They're high on them. They like them. They think that they project to the NFL level, but you never know until you get them into camp, until you get them into games, and you probably see them play a year or two, if not more, worth of games. But Trey Amos was a very good value pick for them. Ran 4.43 in the 40, 6'1", another, and by the way, this was the second straight year. I meant to mention this before we got into some of the players specifically. The second straight year, Washington had the highest aggregate relative athletic score among its draft choices in the league. That was an emphasis once again. They wanted athletes. Connerly Jr. was a super athletic offensive lineman. Amos ran 4.43 and was super athletic. And then we get to the pick that they made in the fourth round at 128. Wide receiver, Jaylen Lane from Virginia Tech. A player who, by the way, is a very good punt returner as well. But in terms of wide receivers heading into this draft, Jaylen Lane was a guy that projected anywhere from 10 to 20 on average among the wide receivers. Another really good athlete, ran 4.34 at the combine. Jaylen Lane had a career in which he started at Middle Tennessee State, played 3 years there, transferred to Tech in 2023. Ended up in 2 years with about 79 receptions, 8 touchdowns, but also carried the ball a bunch. A lot of jet sweeps, a lot of fly sweeps. They utilized Jaylen Lane and his speed, which was exceptional over and over again at Tech. 4.34 he ran. in the 40. He's very fast. I think after spending some time watching him more so over the weekend than I did before the draft, I think he's got really good vision. I actually think his vision and his cuts really show up as a punt returner. He averaged 10.8 yards per punt return with 2 touchdowns in college. He also returned some kicks. But I thought his vision as a returner was even at times more consistent and better looking than his open field vision as a pass catcher or as a runner. But what he does have is he's got exceptional kind of acceleration. He's got great speed, but there is that ability to separate once he catches the ball. That is exciting. With that said, he's a bit, small. He's 5'10", 190. So that would be the one knock. But, even reading a little bit about him over the weekend, because you don't get a lot of the blocking in the highlight packages. But in reading about him, he was, as a blocker, a willing blocker. Now, I'll also tell you, as a punt returner, muffed a couple of punts last year for Virginia Tech. Something just to keep in mind. All right, so Jaylen Lane, 4th round. My favorite player since we talked on Friday, after spending a bunch of time looking at these players and reading about these players, is Kane Madano, the linebacker from UCLA that they selected in the 6th round. This is instinctive at the highest levels. The linebacker Carson Schwessinger from UCLA went with the first pick in the 2nd round, higher than most people anticipated. Kane Madano is 6'3", 222, played primarily linebacker in a 3-3-5, which is a typical college scheme you see across the board. You'll see that 3-3-5. He didn't really play a whole lot in his first 4 years at UCLA, but became a starter in 2023. And this is just a guy that just makes plays. Now, he misses some when he gambles. This is one of those guys that's going to, use his anticipation and his feel and his vision for the game to kind of jump stuff. And sometimes he's wrong. And so that can lead sometimes to missed tackles or to getting beat in coverage. But last year for UCLA, he had 2 interceptions, 1 for a touchdown, and 3 forced fumbles in a season in which he had his best season as a tackler as well. Everything about watching Kane Madano on tape, and I didn't watch much of him before because linebacker was not necessarily the position we were focused on, but this guy is, as Scott McClune would say, he's a football player. Like, he just is an athlete, but it's not just his ability to run, and he ran 4.46 at the combine. It's not his ability on a vertical leap, which, by the way, 38 inches on the vertical. This is a high-level athlete. It's his athletic anticipation that is so impressive to watch. I went back specifically to read what Adam Peters, and it was actually Lance Newmark who did the press conference after the day 3 picks, because I really wanted to hear what he said after I watched Kane Madano highlights. And he said, a guy that we have a vision for and we're excited about and feel. He said Kane Madano from UCLA is a guy that really kind of is a unique story where he's got an offensive background and he transitioned himself into a linebacker. Really a cool athlete, tall, long, fastest linebacker at the combine, ran sub 4.5. Ran 4.46. Another guy that has a really unique body type and just a unique athlete in terms of his testing numbers. To me, you can kind of feel his offensive history in his play. I think he has a really good feel as a coverage player, just has a unique sense. As a pass defender, we have a unique situation where linebackers coach Ken Norton Jr. coached him at UCLA. So we had some great insight on what we were getting in terms of the player and the person. Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and I went out to see that UCLA Pro Day in March and had some great conversations about him. And he was another player, I hate to beat a dead horse, but was at the top of our board at the time when we picked, in another one where we just had great buy-in from all sides of the evaluation process. I think when he says he just has a really good feel as a coverage player, just has a unique sense, that's what really, really pops on film for Kane Madano, is that he's just one of those guys that just has kind of that sixth sense about where the ball is going to be. Like, oh God, why am I blanking on this player? The safety for the Bills for many years. Damn. Guy that's played a number of spots around the league. I'll come up with his name shortly, but I always loved him as a player because it wasn't, and by the way, Madrano is much more athletic and it looks like he could play a number of positions. I'm sure he'll be an outstanding special teams player as well. But, there was one thing that did pop up and you could see it on tape, is that against some of the higher level teams they played, he just gambled too much and ultimately was out of position to make tackles. He's also an older player. Like, he's 24, I think, going on 25. I liked of their players since we talked Friday, I think he is my favorite of the group. And then they drafted a running back, Jakori Merritt from Arizona, although really he didn't really play much for Arizona. He played in one football game against his former school, New Mexico, which is where in 2023 he rushed for 1,100 plus yards and 17 touchdowns. So running back Jakori Merritt. So didn't look at him when I did my running back stuff. He was really way down the list of running backs, in part because he didn't play last year. He played one game for Arizona and then was ruled ineligible because he started his career at Alabama State and played there for 4 seasons and then played at New Mexico in 2023, then thought he had eligibility, but the NCAA ruled against the eligibility after he played in one game. In that one game, by the way, against New Mexico, the school he played for the year before, 13 carries, 106 yards, and a touchdown. He averaged 8.2 yards per carry. Now, Arizona demolished New Mexico State, although the game was competitive early. I watched a bunch of his highlights from that game. So, by the way, his nickname's Bill. All right, so it's Bill Krosky Merritt, or Bill Merritt, not Bill Marriott, but Bill Merritt. But Jakori Krosky Merritt is impressive on tape, man. He is one of those dudes who, he's 5'10", 205. He ran 4.45. He actually looks 4.45 on the field. He is explosive. He has good vision. Now, he's one of those guys where the games in which he had big games weren't always against the best opponents. Let me just I'll pull up the game log from New Mexico in particular, where he had some massive games at the end of 2023. All right, hold on for 1 second. I'll pull it here. So he had in 2023 for New Mexico, all right, he had his final 2 games against Fresno and Utah State. 21 for 209 and 2 touchdowns, 31 for 233 and a touchdown. So in 2 games, he went 52 for 442 yards and 3 touchdowns. But against the likes of Boise, UNLV that year, they were a very good defensive team. They played early in the year, Texas A&M. The results were much different. He was down well below, 5 yards per carry, but still competitor, and looks the part. We'll see. I kind of felt like Washington needed an all-down back, not necessarily for this year all down, because if you assume Eckler and Debo will get some of the all down stuff, but, a guy that could go in there first and second down. And to me, he looks more change of pace. But you can't get it all, with 5 picks in the draft. And that leads me to this. The biggest surprise, clearly the biggest surprise, is that Washington did not end up with an edge defensive end. We spent a lot of time looking at all of the edges, all of the defensive ends, and they didn't take any of them. There were as many edges and defensive tackles picked in this draft as any other position. They had opportunities, obviously, in the second round. Mike Green went long before, they came up at 61, and Oladeju and Scorton and my guy JTT from Ohio State, he went much earlier than projected to the Colts early in that round. Ezeraku went early in that round to Dallas. Then when you got to the 4th round at 128, the guy Kyle Kennard was a possibility, but they went wide receiver. You had a lot of edge defensive ends selected in this draft. I think edges and defensive ends were right at the top in terms of players drafted, and Washington didn't come away with one. To me, that's the biggest surprise, is that they did not get an edge defensive end. And, we'll see if maybe they just like what they have and what they were able to add during the offseason, more than we did, which means more than what we think. I think they think Wise is a pass rusher. I think in year 2, they believe Armstrong can really step it up. I think Kinlaw is versatile, and they'll play him on early downs, maybe outside. We'll see. I've always felt, based on something that was told to me at one point during last summer, is that Javonte Jean-Baptiste, their 7th rounder from last year, was a player they really had high hopes for. But ultimately, on defense, in terms of the draft and the offseason so far, Trey Hendrickson hasn't been traded yet. It's the biggest mystery. Biggest mystery. I'm not hashtagging let Adam cook. I mean, some of that's just absurd when it comes to the draft, that you have no idea on what they drafted and what these players will be at the professional level for a couple of years. We were surprised last year, certainly, that Sanders still turned into as good of a player as he did right away. And you would hope that for Trey Amos, another corner in the 2nd round, that you could end up with a guy with some size and length who can run and is athletic, that he ends up being a big-time outside corner to pair with Marshawn Lattimore, and you can move Sanders still inside in terms of the longer-term plan. We shall see. But this offseason, if it's over, and it's never over, there are still players out there who are free agents. There are going to be players released or cut or attempted to be traded. And then, of course, we get to the period at the end of training camp. But overall, I'm not into grading drafts. But overall, it was another athletic class. And I really like Kane Madano's tape. He may never play for them. Who knows? But man, what an instinctive anticipation athlete he is. And I could certainly see him at the very least being a big contributor on special teams. And I certainly like Jaylen Lane as a potential punt returner. They could use a punt returner as long as he can hold on to the ball. All right. The press conference, Mayor, Commissioner Josh Harris coming up. We'll carry it live.
All right. This morning, D.C. Mayor's office, Muriel Bowser, and the Washington Commanders have announced a deal to bring them back to the RFK site. More specific details will be announced at the joint press conference. You can hear that in just about 10 minutes here on the Team 980. The Caps got the big win in Montreal last night by a score of 5-2. They bring home a 3-1 series lead. Andrew Mangiapane scored the game-winning goal. They will meet again on Wednesday at Capital One Arena. Coverage at 6:45 on 106.7 The Fan. The Nats with 2 walk-off wins this weekend. Yesterday, beating the Mets on a throwing error that allowed Luis Garcia to reach first, and C.J. Abrams sprinted in from second to lift the Nats over the Mets 8-7. They close out the series today at 4:05. Pregame starts at 3:35 on 106.7 The Fan. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980 and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
So down at the Wilson Building Room down on Pennsylvania Avenue, the press conference with the mayor, Josh Harris, and even the commissioner, Roger Goodell, is about to begin. We're going to carry it live. It's the announcement that will announce a deal has been reached between the team and the city to bring the team's football team back to D.C. to play on the RFK site. We'll hear a lot of details, I'm sure, about what the plans are. And I would assume some of the questions will be about, how far it has to go to get done, because there are things like a city council vote and a lot of zoning issues that could get a lot of neighborhood and residential pushback. We'll see what happens there. But this is, as we've known for a while, good news. And this is news that would have never happened with Dan Snyder. I've talked to so many people over the last few months as this was becoming more and more of a possibility. Once, especially in late December, the land was cleared to be controlled by the city. And that is, everybody consistently across the board said it just doesn't happen with Snyder. Part of it is, believe it or not, Snyder just didn't have the wherewithal in that moment to be able to fund the part that Josh Harris and his group is willing to fund. It sounds crazy because $6 billion later, net of what he owed in debt and everything else, call it $4 billion plus. He's doing pretty well. But the Virginia deals and probably the Maryland deals, the Maryland offer would have looked perhaps better to him. But it was very difficult for anybody in the city to do much for Dan Snyder over the years. Josh Harris and company have owned this team for basically a year and a half. It'll be 2 years, end of July this summer. And they have, an elite quarterback coming off the team's best season since 1991. And now they will announce, with the mayor, a deal to bring the team back to the RFK site, back to the city. There's a lot of information that we got, but it was embargoed until this 11 a.m. Announcement, just if you're wondering. And so that's why we haven't gotten into a lot of the details, and you'll hear them talk about it though here at 11 a.m. And there's been some reporting out there. The Eric Flax and the Post and Megan Flynn and Sam and Nikki have all done some excellent reporting as well. So once they are ready to roll, we will take you live downtown for the announcement. By the way, in mentioning all of the sports that happened this weekend, because it really was busy. We had 2 Caps games since we last spoke. By the way, Friday night, I thought they got outplayed. I also thought the officiating seemed one-sided in that game. But also over the weekend, in addition to the draft and other things, the Nats took 2 of 3 with another game scheduled today at 4:05 against the first place Mets. They won a 1-run thriller on Friday night, lost a very competitive game yesterday 2-0, and then won on Saturday, and then won yesterday 8-7 with an incredible comeback in that game where they rallied over the last 3 innings for 7 runs after they trailed 7-1 to beat the Mets 8-7. So really good weekend for the Nats. The Nats are actually in last place. Actually, they're not now. They're a half game above last place after the win yesterday, a half game ahead of Miami and Atlanta. But look, they have played much better than I think a lot of people thought heading into this season. And James Wood and Dylan Cruz. Cruz had another home run yesterday for Cruz. That's his 4th of the season after he started off so slowly. Josh Wood, another hit yesterday, but they have been really hitting and generating a lot of offense. It's just a different offensive baseball team than it was a year ago. But after that slow start by Dylan Cruz, he had kind of that breakout game in Colorado. But over the weekend against the Mets, 6 of 11 he went with a home run and an RBI. So good for him. Right now, what they're doing downtown is they're showing a video to get the thing started. You may have seen this video, or I think it's the same video. Perhaps it is. Yeah, looks like it. It's been circulating on social media where the team put out, about a 2-minute trailer video about the return to Washington, narrated, by the way, by Joe Theismann, which was fun to see. Yeah, those memories are always great. And we've already played a couple of really, as I think my guy Alan said, spine-tingling cuts from some of those RFK intros from years ago. It'll be different. I mean, I think we're less than 10 years away from a Super Bowl in DC. What's that going to be like? We'll probably have a draft here before then. What's it going to be like with 300,000 people for 3 straight days down on the mall, if they can even get the permitting for that? And then, we're ready to go. All right, let's go out live to the press conference.
There were legends that were made there that are here with us today. Hall of Famers like John Riggins and Darryl Green. A second Super Bowl MVP, Doug Williams. And of course, our legendary Hall of Fame coach, Joe Gibbs. Today is not only about the past, it's obviously about the future as well. So it's fitting that next to Joe Gibbs is our head coach, Dan Quinn, and our general manager, Adam Peters. Timeless memories were made at the RFK site, and that's what today is about, repeating that. Timeless future memories for our city and for our team. These individuals here in particular are ready and excited to share a very special announcement with both the DC residents, Commanders fans in the region, and of course around the world as well. Washington, DC Mayor Muriel Bowser. The managing partner of the Washington Commanders, Josh Harris. And the commissioner of the NFL, Roger Goodell. Been waiting a long time to say this, Madam Mayor. It is time for kickoff. So, Mayor Bowser, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bram. Promise made. So I want to start by saying, welcome home. Let's give our Commanders a big Washington, D.C. welcome. We are so happy to talk this morning about bringing our team home to the sports capital, back to RFK, where they belong. And I couldn't be more excited for our city, our team, and our fans. Josh and the entire team at the Commanders, thank you. We want to say thank you for not just buying our team, some would say saving our team, getting the team to the NFC Championship for the first time in 33 years. But we want to thank you for making a transformational investment in Ward 7, in our city, especially now, a time where we need it the most. Commissioner, I know you can't have favorites, but we know where you grew up. And this is a big deal. I've been working on this for the 10 years that I've been mayor. And now we have the right partner at the right time. And Josh is someone who cares more than just about this franchise. He cares about doing the right thing. And he likes to win. You've heard me say that before. He knows how to put together a winning team. And throughout this process, it's been a cooperative one. We were joined in our goals to advance a deal that we could be proud of, a development that would serve the city for generations to come, and support the best professional sports franchise in the world. So when Josh talks about this, he very elegantly says that he wants to provide and do for the city and give the city what it deserves. And I agree. And I'd go a step further and say that right now, as our economy is shifting, it's something our city really needs, because we need growth and we need jobs. We have 180 acres of opportunity on the banks of the Anacostia River. And we have, and I have to pause to acknowledge our Congresswoman and Congressman James Comer of Kentucky, who advanced a bipartisan effort to deliver that land to DC. Thank you, Congresswoman Norton. This land has been blighted and underutilized for too long. And what our deal with the Washington Commanders provides is the fastest and surest route to developing the RFK campus, and not just delivering sports and entertainment, but delivering housing, jobs, recreation, and economic development. We will be able to deliver thousands of homes here. It will deliver a world-class, community-focused sportsplex for our kids. It will create park space and build out riverfront and trails. It's about creating jobs for DC residents and revenue that will support what all of our city needs, city services that have made us a growing city. We're going to be talking a lot about this project in the coming weeks and months, and it will be clear that this is a good deal for DC. It's a fantastic deal, a win-win-win for the city, the team, and the fans. So I want to say, thank you for everyone that has been involved at this point. And before we take questions, I'll go through a quick list of thank yous. But I first want to introduce a person who has been a great part of the DC community in the time that he's joined. He has brought on local partners into the Commanders ownership that has meant a lot for us. And I see Mark Ein and Mitch Rails in the front row. Give them a big round of applause.
To the live press conference downtown announcing the new stadium deal at RFK.
Long time ago, and I am just so grateful for your partnership, Josh. And You have the floor. Josh Harris, the owner of the Washington Commanders.
Well, everyone, what a great day. It's a great day in our process to bring the Commanders home. And Mayor, thank you. I'm so appreciative for our partnership and everything you've done through this process. And, this day is a testament to your leadership and the city's leadership. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to the council members that are here. We know you're going to be considering all this, and thank you for your partnership in helping us get to this historic moment. We know you have a bunch of work to do, and we're going to be there transparently providing all the information to you, Chairman Mendelson. I know you're not here with us today, and the entire group of DC council members. So very much appreciative that you're here today to listen. And Roger, I know you're busy. Thank you for being here. It's very meaningful to have the commissioner of the NFL sitting side by side with us today. So today I am absolutely thrilled to announce that the Commanders are ready to make and our partners are committed to make the single largest private investment in DC history. One of my earliest memories was walking down East Capitol Street to RFK. I only knew one person, my Uncle Jerry, Robbie Miller sitting right there, who had tickets because there was a 25-year waiting list. And I got to go once or twice a year, but I watched every game intently. And I grew up watching the greats, whether it be Sonny Jurgensen, Billy Kilmer, Joe Theismann, Mark Ripien, the Hogs, Joe Gibbs, Art Monk, and 3 Super Bowls. Yeah. You need one of those. And obviously, we're so honored to have Darryl, Doug, and John. Thank you all for being here today. And you're right there up there. And Adam and Dan, no pressure. That was the Washington that I remembered. When on Sundays, everything stopped. Everyone was glued to their TV or in the stadium. And we've already seen a reawakening of that spirit, but we want to bring it back. Now we want to bring the Commanders home with a new RFK that our fans will love, our opponents will fear. It'll be loud. We want to make it about football, but also about the city and the community. And we want to host the biggest and best events in the world. When our ownership group started on this journey 2 years ago, we laid out 3 clear priorities: build a championship caliber team, improve fan experience, and make a positive impact on this community. Today's announcement is a key part of that vision. Let's come home. This project is about so much more than building a stadium. It's about a once-in-a-generation opportunity to create a catalyst for long-term transformational economic growth here in DC. That means thousands of new jobs, billions of new tax revenue, thousands of new homes, partnerships with local businesses, and the creation of about 90 acres of mixed-use development for our community. And you know what? The city of Washington and the DMV deserve it. Without exaggeration, this will be the best stadium in the country when it's built in front of the Anacostia River, facing the Capitol and the Washington Monument.
I wonder if we should show a picture of it.
Show it up. And while today marks an exciting step towards bringing the Commanders back to our spiritual home in DC, I also want to recognize the incredible partnership we built with Maryland and Virginia. In Maryland, where we currently play, and in Virginia, where we train, I just want to say that I'm particularly grateful to Governor Moore and the Maryland leadership for their support and shared belief in what we can achieve together at our current stadium site as we move where we play football games to new RFK. Thank you, Governor Moore, Maryland delegation. On a personal note, I am deeply humbled and grateful that God has allowed me to be part of this journey to help shape the next chapter for Commanders football, for DC, and for the entire DMV community. I'm also grateful to my family who's sitting here. Couldn't have done it without you, my wife Marjorie, Hannah, my brother Gabe, my mother Sylvia, Mama Commander.
Mama Commander, I love it.
And I couldn't have done it without my partners, Mitch Rails, Mark On, Mr. Fallick, and others that I'm not sure if they want to be mentioned or not, so I'm not going to mention them, who are in the audience. I believe, and I know that Mayor Bowser believes, I know that you believe, in the power of this project to bring our city and this region together. We're excited to continue working with the council, the mayor, and the DC leadership in this community to shape the next chapter of RFK. RFK was the site of some of my earliest and most meaningful memories of generations to come. The future is very, very bright. Thank you for getting this done.
Let's get it done.
Thank you. It will take quite an investment in infrastructure because we're going to make that stadium shake once again. Just like we used
Do
to.
it.
They know all about that.
You're listening to a live press conference
In the most
downtown
powerful-
announcing the new RFK site here on the Team 980.
Let me introduce NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, who, like myself and like many of us in this room, grew up going to the old RFK Stadium. Commissioner.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and thanks, Graham. This is a very special day, one that many of us have been looking forward to many years. I'm excited to join the mayor and Josh to help announce the intention of the Commanders to return to their historical site, their home in Washington, D.C. Thank you to Mayor Bowser for your leadership, extraordinary, and we're here and glad to support you. And of course to Josh for your incredible leadership. Under Josh's leadership, this team has become a playoff team in a very short period of time. With this stadium, it will also become a leader off the field too. The Commanders' future is clearly a bright one. Today would not be possible without the help from Congress, who in passing the RFK bill late last year, and I want to thank Representatives Comer and Norton for sponsoring the bill and for the congressional leadership for passing the needed legislation to get us here today. I grew up in this district, as was mentioned before, attending games at old RFK Stadium. It was a special place. Many of our early memories as a football fan were formed there, watching the great teams and sharing the experiences with my family and the tremendous fans of this team. A generation of fans growing up rooting for the team did not have that experience, but the next ones will, and I could not be more excited for them. The stadium project announced today promises to be great for the fans, the team, and the district, and the NFL. It also makes us better as a club, as a league, and all of our clubs playing in a world-class stadium in front of passionate fans is one of our big objectives. We've seen throughout the country new stadiums transform communities. Since 2001, more than $32 billion has been invested in stadiums, and there are at least 8 more projects underway, an estimated cost of $20 billion. This will be critical in revitalizing an area that has been dormant and undeveloped for nearly 30 years when the team first left. Here in the district, There will be billions of dollars invested in this area and economic activity that lifts up this city and generates jobs throughout the region. The NFL has a long history of investing in stadiums projects along with the home team, but all 31 teams will contribute along with Josh and his partners. This is an important project that the league recognizes, and we will be there to support. Once again, I want to thank the mayor and Josh for their incredible leadership. We look forward to working with you both. This project is important to us, and we recognize we will be supporting you throughout the city council process as well, and look forward to seeing you all on opening day.
Thank you, Roger. Give the commissioner a big round of applause. So let me just quickly mention some folks who have worked really long and hard to get us to this point. But I also want to emphasize to do. And my team will stand ready to work with the members of the council, providing all of the information that they need. I want to recognize the council's chair for business and economic development, at-large council member Kane McDuffie. The host council member for RFK, and I told him he came in the door winning, council member Wendell Felder. The council member who has been my partner throughout my tenure for housing and making sure we deliver it, at-large council member Anita Bonds. Thank you for being here. Very quickly, I call them my big deal team because we do big deals here. And I asked this lady to join me when I became mayor 10 years ago. She thought she was retired, and she told me she would stay for a year. And 10 years later, she's here. And I want to thank Beverly Perry.
All right, we are going to take you to a break. We'll
chief.
come back, and if there's a Q&A with the mayor and with Josh Harris and even the commissioner, we'll play some of that for you as well. You've been listening to the announcement on Washington's football team return to RFK here on the Team 980.
Authority for the district, who will be our partner in parking, and led chaired by Leif Dormsjo. Thank you, Leif. And
All right, what's going on right now down there is the mayor and Josh Harris are thanking basically everybody in town and certainly thanking people that could be of significance to them moving forward with this process. There was a quote by Roger Goodell that really summed up the last 27 years when he said, "A generation grew up without what he experienced as a fan at RFK Stadium, what Bram, mentioned he experienced, what I did, and many of you who are listening experienced, and my sons and many that have, boys and girls, ages, early to mid-teens through their late 20s and into their early 30s. We basically went almost a generation and a half of missing out on what so many of us had a chance to experience." But he said a generation grew up without it, but the next one will be without it, but the next one will, as in they'll get to experience something great. Winning matters, but hopefully they can do that as well. All right, let's head back out there. They're taking some questions right now.
ESPN.
Feel like right now?
I'll start. I mean, obviously, this has been a vision of ours since we
Real
bought
quick,
the team,
how much is-
bought the club. It was
DC.
in our original plan. It's been a journey. It's been a process. I'd say.
I didn't come here to announce that. I just think
it
you're mad.
really started to get real in the last few weeks when when the mayor, I think, shook me by and said we got to get going, even though we're waiting around for some politics to occur. And but it got real then, and we're so happy to be in partnership with the city and the NFL announcing it today.
For me, Sam, I knew once we got the land that we needed to be ready. And when I sat across the table from Josh, and we kind of had a time frame in mind that this had to get done, or we were both going to have to move on. He was going to have to move on from us, and we were going to have to move on from the team. And so once we established that, I already knew we had the best site. I did. I knew we had the best site. And once I knew that he wanted to be back home, that we chartered a path to get there. So I would say when we knew we had the land, we'd already been working on a pretty good plan, and now we're here.
I would just add very quickly, these projects are not easy projects to take on. They're complex. They involve a lot of decision making along the way. There are difficult periods, but I would fall back on the leadership of the mayor, who had the vision and the willingness to take this on. I think that does not happen in cities or states without that kind of a political leader standing up and saying this is good for our community, which we obviously agree. And of course, Josh, who understood not just the emotional reason for coming back to the district, but also this was really the right thing for this community. This will be a tremendous economic driver, but more importantly, I think it will send a signal to everyone in the world, frankly, of this community and the way they're going and the direction they're going.
Our next question, David Aldridge from The Athletic.
Thank you. For Josh and for Mayor Bowser, what assurances can you provide to local residents that they will not be overwhelmed by the new construction, the new projects, that they will be able to stay in the area and stay in the housing that they currently have? And for Roger, I wonder if the SoFi project in LA is at all analogous to this in terms of the partnership that the Cronkies had with the city of Inglewood.
Well, thanks for that question. And the good thing about this site is it was an NFL stadium there. The Washington football team played there for decades, and the transportation infrastructure exists. It is served by Metro. It's served by the highway. It's served by an expansive bus system. The difference between when the team last played and now is that there are many other modes that are available for people to travel there as well. What we've heard from the community is they're tired of the blight. And they want the 180 acre parcel to be brought back to life. So one advantage is that we won't just have what's there now, a sea of parking and a stadium. We're going to be able to have a wonderful mix of uses. I love that we can show a map that demonstrates all of the different parcels that will be engaged, that include entertainment, an entertainment district that has set aside park space, including the area that can't be developed right along the Anacostia River, and an entire recreation district that the district will populate with the existing fields in our sportsplex, and what we're calling the Kingman Park District, which will be largely residential. So this is what we promise to deliver, a mix of uses that includes an NFL stadium.
Yeah, David, the only thing I would add, and that's well said, is just that only 15%. Right now, there's a crumbling. I mean, we've walked around there a bunch of times, and there's nothing there, right? And it's just been that way since RFK closed in the 90s. And so now we're bringing this area back to life. We're activating the area. And the stadium itself is only 15% of the overall landmass. So, obviously, this is going to be a great thing for that area in terms of activating, the Anacostia River. You can actually ride your bike from Nationals Park. It's a thing for the. And so that's a big part of what we're doing.
David, I think you asked about analogous to other stadiums. I think Atlanta is a very interesting analogy also. I think Los Angeles clearly is. I think Detroit is. I think there are many cities where they have seen the value of the reinvestment into that community. A stadium being surrounded by a development such as this that I think is very powerful, and they've all been successful. Both in, I think, the community's mind, most importantly, but also in our mind. But I also think they've been successful from an economic standpoint.
Our next question is from Stephen Wino of the Associated Press.
Josh, my question's for you. Obviously, I know you guys have been looking at sites in Maryland and Virginia in the district. How much of sort of your investment was for you guys as Mitch and your ownership group, nostalgia about how much you guys as a team wanted to be back at the RFK site?
Yeah, I mean, obviously look, we all grew up here, right? And we all were certainly touched by our experiences, but I think it was less nostalgia and more just a deep connection to understanding how important the location was. It's in the middle of, you've got, the DMV is obviously Virginia, Maryland, and DC. DC happens to be in the middle. Obviously, we all experienced, the rumbling of RFK and the centrality of that location in terms of its proximity to the seat of government and to businesses and being in the middle, as well as the experience of a city stadium, right? Like walking there, taking the metro, kind of the experience itself. So I think that all of those things contributed, but at the end of the day, it was the right thing. It was less nostalgia. It was more just the fact that we had grown up here gave us that vision to, not look at the crumbling concrete that was there, but remember in our minds the vivid nature of what Washington football was all about and how it really brought a city that was socioeconomically, distinct and challenged at that point. With lots of groups of people together, right? No matter where you were from, who you were, your race, color, religion. On Sundays, you were a Washington football fan. And so that really did contribute to our focus on it and then, kind of brought it to life. And then look, let's face it, Washington is amongst, if not the most important city in the world. It's a gateway city for the United States of America. And to have a stadium and a site, where you can see the Washington Monument, you can see the Capitol. I remember watching on TV those shots and having John Madden talk about, we're here in the nation's capital, and there's the Washington Monument, there's the White House, there's the nation's capital. And then there's RFK at that bowl, right? And so all that stuff was incredibly motivating to all of us.
Our next question is from Chick Hernandez of WUSA.
All righty then. You gonna hold this? Okay. I am capable. Commissioner, we've had 2 decades of darkness here with this franchise, and then it turned around. What's the league view of this franchise and what's taking place right now with this welcoming back home?
Yeah, I would say that the league view is incredibly positive. Josh coming in and I think making a commitment to this franchise that they were going to be one that this community would be proud of. Obviously, every owner that comes in hopes to have the winning tradition reestablished quickly. I think Josh may have been ahead of his timetable a little bit, but good for him. And I think it's
good jamming coach and quarterback.
Jaden helps, but he's got a great team over here. But I would say that we look at this as a very important football market. This has been one that we want to have, obviously, a sterling franchise in this community. We feel that we have that now. It's going in the right direction. I think the commitment by Josh and the city to bring the team back into DC is a really important one. I think emotionally, but also I think it signifies that they care about this community, they care deeply about it, and they're going to do the right things to make this franchise successful.
Our next question is from Rebecca Turco of WJLA7.
Hi, good morning. This is a question for the mayor. The $202 million for infrastructure and the $89 million for the sportsplex. Can you explain why use taxpayer money for this? Why not pursue creative options like personal seat licenses, for instance?
Okay, so I think you've asked me about the public investment in the stadium. So what I hope has been made clear is that this is a massive investment and the largest private investment in the district's history. The Commanders will be committing $2.7 billion to building the stadium. $2.7 billion. So the total investment will be $3.6 billion. Our part of the investment will be $500 million to support horizontal stadium construction. And Events DC, as I mentioned, our partner, is partnering for parking in the sum of $181 million. And the district is also partnering and parking for a total of $175 million. At the end of the day, we will own both of the parking garages. And so in addition to that, is we would, and as we have done with all public parcel development, we contribute to infrastructure development. And so we have the sum of $202 million listed there for roadways and transportation studies and the like that support bringing RFK to life. Very similar to what we're doing at McMillan, or what we've done at St. Elizabeth's, or what we've done at Walter Reed, or what we've done at the adjacent Hill East. That the district goes in and supports infrastructure and works with a trusted development partner to build out. And that's how we expect to proceed here. As it relates to the sportsplex, this is a long promise of mine. I think 3 years ago, I made my first investment in the sportsplex in our capital improvements plan. And we're coming back as part of this package to make sure we deliver it. You may not know this, but our kids right now leave school, if they are indoor track athletes, for example, and they travel out of DC to go do track. Our gymnasts, they go around the region. Our cheerleaders don't have a place to cheer. So we need a world-class indoor sports facility, and we will invest in it at RFK.
Our next question is from Sam Collins of the Washington Informer.
Peace and blessings. Sam P.K. Collins of the Washington Informer. Madam Mayor, and anybody else who wants to answer, if we can just talk about, as it relates to the community benefits plan, what is the timeline of stakeholder engagement? How much in funds are we talking about being dispersed? And is this an arrangement that's happening in perpetuity or for a limited time?
Well, with all economic development projects, I start with this, and I've been involved with a lot over the years. The number one community benefit is what we will deliver on the site. So we will be able to deliver because of this catalytic anchor investment by the commanders between 5,000 and 6,000 units of housing. We will be able to deliver more hotels. We will be able to deliver more jobs. So those are the chief economic benefits. When we look at this, more than 16,000 jobs will be created and more than $20 billion in tax revenue over the period of this commitment. Those are the benefits. Additionally, we have laid out some pretty preliminary ideas with the team about other ways that the community will want to be involved in the site. I know I've had some preliminary conversations with members of the council. The team has had preliminary conversations with members of the council, and I expect those ideas will be fleshed out during the council process.
Your next question is from Mark Seagraves of NBC4.
Hey, good morning. Thanks very much. A question for you, Mayor Bowser, and a question for you, Mr. Harris. Mayor Bowser, I'm just wondering what you will say to residents at a time, you're faced with an enormous uphill budget battle going forward, both in the 2025 and in the upcoming 2026, with the prospects of layoffs, cuts of services, and hundreds of millions of dollars cut from the out years in the budget. How do you justify, what do you say to residents who think this is not the right time to put hundreds of millions of dollars into this development when you're having to cut services and possibly furlough workers? And then, Mr. Harris, for you, you mentioned that through this, you've learned a lot about the political process with the federal government. You're about to learn a lot about the political process with the DC Council. And I only see 4 council members here today. You're going to need 7 votes. I'm wondering what your plan, we saw what happened with Monumental in Virginia. I'm wondering what your plan B is and how serious you've negotiated with Maryland throughout this, if this deal falls through, if the DC Council fails to approve this. So, Mayor Bowser,
first, Mark, I want to make sure you're not confusing viewers. We're not talking about the CR caused FY25 summer crises. We're not talking about that. What we're talking about is our future. We're talking about our FY26 budget. And I'm advancing a balanced FY26 budget that is both focused on right-sizing spending for sure, but it is also making some big, bold investments in growth. Now is not the time where our economy is shifting. You know what our job is right now? Our job is to replace economic activity for 40,000 people. If we don't make some change, they may not have their jobs. If we don't make some change, they may not live here. So our job is to advance a budget that is bold and that invests in growth. And I'm going to be talking a lot more about all of that growth agenda, but it starts with a catalytic investment at RFK. We cannot leave. If you need to add revenue, as we do, you can't leave 180 acres vacant. If you need to add jobs, as we do, you cannot wait for an anchor to show up to start developing there. When you need to attract business, you have to be about business. So we're going to be talking about FY26. Now, the Congress still has to fix FY25. Because if they don't, because your question is a serious one, I call it a fake budget crisis because we have the money. So if we have to cut services because they don't fix their snafu, then that's a problem. But we're going to keep pushing it. But we can't stop because no matter what happens with FY25, FY26 is coming. And so we're going to have at the end of FY30 or the beginning of FY30, a new stadium. We're going to have it.
I think that this is an incredible ROI for the city of DC, the local community around the stadium. Literally, the mayor has done an amazing job at negotiating on behalf of the city, but also becoming a partner with us in an investment that is going to create like billions of tax revenue, thousands of jobs, a whole new community, and tie together the city. And look, I look forward to continuing my engagement and intensifying my engagement with the council, both and being super transparent, giving them the details they need. And I think the project speaks for itself. And I think the project will stand, and I believe will convince the council this is in the best interest of DC.
Our next question is from Stephanie Ramirez of Fox 5.
Can I just say one other thing? And we did have other alternatives, but we're really focused here. Of course not.
All right, a question for Mr. Harris.
The end, making the pitch that she will continue to make, especially with those that push back on it. And it sounded pretty good. We'll follow up on this. And if you want to weigh in, phone lines are open. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Looks like the stadium will be built on the RFK site. Do you like it? Don't you like it? Why? Why not? Have at it. Ben Standig later on next hour. We'll get back to the draft. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. All right, let me try to summarize this for everybody as you've been paying attention or maybe weren't paying attention, because there was a lot of numbers and a lot of information thrown out there. I think the mayor does a really good job as a communicator. I really do. And I think the way she described it actually was the most concise. But basically, we now have an agreement between the team and, of course, the city. Attending this press conference today were Josh Harris and the mayor and the commissioner of the league, Roger Goodell. As I mentioned earlier in the show, for those that don't know, Roger Goodell grew up here because his father was in government, and he went to RFK and went to Skins games at RFK. In the crowd were Dan Quinn and Adam Peters and John Riggins and Darrell Green and Doug Williams. I'm sure I'm missing a few. Four of, I think Mark Seagraves mentioned, or somebody did, four of the current 12 council members were there. And you heard, occasional references and thanks to them in advance of what they hope the council will do, which is approve this deal. So overall, this is basically, as the mayor laid out, a $3.6 billion project to not just build a stadium, but to totally transform this 180-acre blighted parcel of land on the banks of the Anacostia River. This will be the largest single investment in the city's history to do anything. The stadium that will be built will be a 65,000 or so seat stadium that will be what they call roofed, not domed now, it's roofed, but it will be an indoor stadium. This is something we've talked about for a while, but that is an absolute given. And the reason that's a given is because they want to be able to maximize year-round usage of the facility. They want to be able to get a Super Bowl to DC. The commissioner was actually asked about the Super Bowl by John Kine, and he said, what are the odds? And he said they have increased dramatically, which they have. Within 10 years, we're going to have a Super Bowl in DC. 2032, 2033 Super Bowl in DC. So, $3.6 billion project in which the team is fronting $2.7 billion of that $3.6 billion investment. Now, the rest of it is made up with, $500 million towards infrastructure from the actual city itself. All right, the $500 million, they talk about horizontal infrastructure towards stadium development. That's apparently money that they already have. In what did she call that fee? It's leveraging dedicated funds from what they call the sports facilities fee. So the district doesn't need to make any cuts from the city's operating budget. This will all be included in what she called FY26, fiscal year 2026. So DC's government's going to invest $500 million for stadium horizontal and non-vertical costs, but they don't have to do anything. That money is there. The district will facilitate parking development using a $175 million bond, which will be funded by what they call in-stadium activity once the stadium is operating. So that will be a mix of things, which, by the way, will probably include PSLs to some degree, personal seat licenses. Get ready. I'm telling you this right now. It's okay, because I think there will still be demand and we're 5 years out, but it's not going to be a cheap ticket. Now, maybe once you get the season ticket portion done, depending on how good the team is, you'll be able to get in on the aftermarket for something that isn't super expensive. But PSL's personal seat licenses give you the right to purchase the season tickets. Ain't going to be cheap. Events DC is going to contribute $181 million for parking garages near the area. And then the district will invest $202 million for utilities infrastructure, roadways, and some sort of transit study. In addition, $89 million will be invested in a sportsplex, meaning fields and sports recreational usage next to the stadium. There's going to be, what's it going to look like around the stadium? Well, there's going to be several areas around the stadium. There's going to be a plaza where you have entertainment, festivals, etc. There's going to be a riverfront area for housing, retail, restaurants, etc. There's going to be a residential district, which will include a significant percentage. I think I read in the press release, 30% of affordable housing. And then that expanded recreational area where $89 million will go towards like a sportsplex with fields, etc. So 3.6 million with the team putting up 2.7, and the rest, the other $900 million roughly, put up by the city with current funds through partnerships with groups like Events DC and through taxpayer dollars. So what are the next steps? The next step is to get the city council to approve it. I can tell you that they need to move quickly. She had mentioned at one point that they needed to move quickly on this thing because they needed to know whether or not they needed to move on from this. And the team certainly needed to know whether or not they needed to go back to Maryland and move into something that could get them into a new facility by 2030. When will the city council vote on this? It's a good question. I don't know, but I would imagine it's got to take place in the next few months. You heard the mayor at the end there. I mean, she's got her pitch down. This is not about costs. This is about future jobs and revenue. Of course, that's the pitch. Now, where all of that future revenue comes from is consumers, from residents, and from things like whatever the stadium generates on game day or event day. I did not think we got an answer to personal seat licenses, but the majority of NFL stadiums do include personal seat licenses. I'm trying to think of where I read this morning, but I think I read that 20 of the 32 teams have them. And by the way, what they do is they dramatically increase the price of being a season ticket holder. You know, that cost can go from anywhere from like $1,500 to $6,000 or something like that. You know, and for premium, and that would be general admission seats, and for premium seats, much higher than that. The other thing we did not get, or we haven't gotten because we did cut out of there, but we'll find out at some point, is whether or not the team itself will relocate to that facility. I don't think they will because they didn't announce that. I wonder if their training, their headquarters will remain in Ashburn. Remember, they own a lot of land now in College Park. So that kind of sums it up, I think. I'm sure I'm missing some pieces. But if you want to weigh in, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. I think all of these things, typically when they get bogged down by people who don't understand revenue, and they're more fixated on costs. They're more fixated on costs to their constituents. Understood, they're in politics. But this is a big area of the city that currently is massively underutilized. And I'd love to see all of the detail about the projected revenue. I think I did read in the press release, it's a press release, that this thing will generate, $4 billion plus, so it'll return. And you heard Josh Harris, talk about the ROI on something like this. Sometimes it takes more advanced business people and bigger thinkers to get things like this done, but they have to be effective in communicating to people who may be less apt to understand the upside to things like this. Josh Harris is used to that, and the mayor is used to that. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I thought it sounded, well done and well communicated, especially by Mayor Bowser. I don't know that that's Josh's strength, but he did a good job there today as well. His strength is building winning things, winning businesses, and already after a year and a half, a winning football team that may be on their way back to DC, something that just flat out was not going to happen as long as the last owner, who was not very good at doing things, remained as owner. Fortunately, that didn't happen. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Let me just see if there's anything else in my notes that I wrote down here of interest. One thing that Josh Harris and Mark Ein and Mitch Rales, they have referred to RFK as the franchise's spiritual home. It's going to be a new home. It's going to be a new team. I mean, there are a lot of things that have changed about this team. That's the massive weight, that was not going to be addressed today and won't be addressed because Josh Harris kind of already addressed it a couple of months ago. But a new stadium, in terms of what that means for the team moving forward, I think it's a very good thing. And I think, Roger Goodell mentioning a new generation is really, I think, the most, important part of the whole mindset of new ownership, even though I'm watching this stage and I know I would bet big money that certainly Josh Harris and Roger Goodell probably think it's silly that the team lost its name and would rather that name exist. I have no idea how the mayor feels. But the issue is over. I mean, I know we had the president address it last week, but this is about future revenues and the people that are the future spenders for this football franchise and for the stadium and the area surrounding the stadium. It's less of an issue, much less of an issue for them. And in some cases, it won't even be thought of as an issue for many of the fans that attend events at that stadium, games included. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Let's start with my guy, Skip. Skip, go ahead. What do you say?
Kevin, as usual, great summary and perspective and overall, communicating the dollars and the investment. And I actually think you did a better job than was done today on stage. I didn't hear them talk the numbers the way you did. So
well, a lot of she did. The mayor broke it down line item by line item, and I was waiting to kind of hear that. Right. She did a good job, and then they also put out a press release that had a lot of it detailed in there as well.
Okay, so yeah, okay, so you were reading from that.
I had it in front of me. Yes. Okay,
great, good job. I think that's very important. And for me, they mentioned nostalgia, and it does bring nostalgia, obviously. I mean, this is another big moment for us, and we've had a few in the last year and a half. And going back to the first game I attended when I was a little kid, I think I've told you this before, it was the 72-43 game. I was a little kid in 1966.
Yeah, I don't remember that one, but yes.
Okay, that
72 to 41. 72 to 41, still the highest scoring game in league history.
Still.
Yeah.
And that was the very first game. I mean, I was a little kid. I didn't really understand, a lot was going on, but it gave me a lasting impression of the team and the players and just the history that has endured for, almost 60 years. And now I think the one thing I do like about the changes in the logo symbols and uniforms, the one thing I do like, Kevin, is the W.
The W, yeah.
The W I do like. I think universally among fans who, maybe don't like the name or those that want Redskins, I do think we all appreciate the W. And now that W actually means something if we have a stadium in Washington, D.C. So I think, it kind of feels like full circle. I mean, we had 30 years of really not being in our home, and now we're back. And that's the feeling that I have today after being a fan of this team for almost 60 years.
I just, you've probably heard me say this a couple of times, including earlier in the show. What's going to be interesting is if we end up having the final 5 years in Landover be the most memorable by far in terms of the games, and who knows, maybe an NFC championship game or two played in that stadium before they move. And the bottom line is, as bad as that stadium was, and it was never good from day one, so much that we have to complain about it. But had they continued to win like they did at RFK, we wouldn't view it the same way. We wouldn't view it after all these years the same way. What came with the new location and leaving the old location was the Dan Snyder era, which was obviously an era that made us all want to get sick year in and year out. Thanks, Skip, as always, for the call. Let's go to our guy, Joe,
Kevin.
in Springfield. Joe, let's go.
Hey, Kevin, what's going on?
What's up, Joe?
So, a little flashback for both of you and me. July of 2023, you and I are celebrating down at Navy Yard, new ownership. It's been almost 2 years, and I honestly feel like, when this stadium is built, I'm not saying it's going to be like the old RFK when the stadium was rocking or something, but when we have that first game there in 2030, it's going to send chills down for all of us. And we're back, man. Who would have thought this was going to happen? We never thought it was going to happen after we left here in 1996, but we're back, man, and it's going to be great. And we believe, man. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Mayor Bowser. It's real, man. And words can't describe it. I'm at a loss for words. I don't know how to describe it. Will the stadium be shaken? Who knows? And I have a feeling it's going to be loud for real. Yeah, we're back, man. Let's do this.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. This from Richard. Richard writes, it's a long note. I'll just paraphrase it. He's like, what was missing over the years was a team that felt like a Washington, D.C. team. That's back. I disagree with that. This was always Washington, D.C.'s team, regardless of where it was playing. Just like, it's the Giants are New York's team and the New York metro area's team, even though they played in Jersey forever. And there are plenty of other examples, the 49ers in Santa Clara, Dallas and, Irving to begin with, which was more of a suburb of Dallas. But anyway, the point being, it was always DC's team. It will feel great, but it's not. Josh Harris said something too, which is a little bit of a change of direction. I just wanted to answer that real quickly. Josh Harris said at one point, he goes, "This is nostalgic, but it's not about nostalgia." And he said it's about a good business decision for both the city and for us, and a very strong ROI, return on investment, that will create, incredible opportunities for jobs and for revenue growth and really to take an area of the city that has not been, or that parcel of land for sure, which has been an eyesore, and turn it into something spectacular. Those of us that are old enough remember what Chinatown was before Abe Pollin built that arena downtown. It was an eyesore. It was a difficult area. It wasn't necessarily a safe area. And it was really the beginning of a lot of neighborhood growth throughout the city. Gentrification, whether you approve of it or not, created these neighborhoods which have turned into be massive job opportunity and revenue generators for the city. And this area will hopefully do the same thing. I don't have the actual, I'd love to see what it looks like in terms of what they're projecting future revenues. But it sounds like it was a good deal for both. Now, the team will, from my understanding, own a lot of the surrounding residential and retail. So there will be, beyond tickets and PSLs and concessions, et cetera, which I think, the concession breakdown, I'm not exactly sure how that works actually, because I think the city gets parking and some of that as well. But, they will certainly end up, I think, doing well with this return. But keep in mind, the upfront investment of $2.7 billion from the team is a lot more expensive than what they would have needed out of pocket in Landover. Let's go to Ian. Ian, go ahead.
Yeah, on the DC neighborhood thing, I totally agree. Chinatown, and you look at the Navy Yard with the Nat Stadium, and then an offshoot of that, the Wharf with the Anthem. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think this will be in that ilk, if you will. It'll totally revive. It'll give another concert venue, another Final Four, Super Bowl, et cetera. But the overall ethos is, this is amazing. I mean, I don't know, even the NIMBYs and the city council, I don't know how anybody could be against this, because they're putting up a lot of their money, which is obviously a big point of contention a lot of times. And it's a place that's already there. It's not like they're going to have to tear down houses to do it. This is going to only uplift the part of the city. I think this will get done really smoothly. The city council saw what happened with Chinatown and Navy Yard, et cetera. I think this is a win. I totally agree with you on the name thing. This is just, that chapter is just closed and everything is moving forward. The team
I
is
didn't
winning.
say that. You just put words into my mouth that I did not speak.
Sorry. So let me rephrase. I think, and have thought for a long time, the name issue is closed, and you're hearing it over and over. Commander means something. We're the Commanders, this, that, the other. I think now that the stadium deal is kind of done, I think they're just,
I think you're out of your mind if you think it's over. I think you are so detached from
Kevin,
a significant percentage of this fan base if you think it's over. What I have emphasized, and maybe you agree with this, is the future of the franchise is a younger demographic. And for them, the issue isn't as significant, and they are the much greater lifetime revenue value customer to the team, and by the way, to the city, because they have a lot more life to live. And so they care less about that issue. But if you think that this issue is over, you haven't been paying attention at all. So you're certainly living in a world that I'm not familiar with.
So number one, I totally agree with you on the younger portion of the fan base. We agree there. My point to you is, you've had Mark Einon, you've had multiple statements by Josh Harris's wife, the ownership group, Mitchell Rails, et cetera, that have talked multiple times about the Redskins aren't coming back. So we agree on that, right?
Yes, I do agree with that, even though we have a wild card and his name's President Trump. But I do agree with you. I don't think it's coming back. But what's your point on that? Of course they're saying that. Do you think that they don't recognize how big of an issue it is with the majority of their fan base still?
So this is where you and I do part ways a little bit. So I'm not saying it's not an issue, and regardless of how many fans or current fans or historic fans view the name, we can agree it's a larger issue for some than others. What I'm saying is, if we know the old name isn't coming back, what is the juice, or is it worth it to change the name again to something that will create consternation again?
Okay, look, I want to sum it up and I want to move on because it's not about the name today. Two different conversations. The complexity of going to something else and their ability to sort of sidestep that issue because of 12 wins, 2 road playoff games where they won 60 minutes from the Super Bowl is different from the issue which I'm discussing, which is what percentage of fan base, current and past, think that this is an issue and want the name changed. It's a significant majority, and their own internal surveys show that. Now, again, and I've said this over and over again, there's no easy solution if Redskins isn't available. We agree on that. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Let me move on. I want to get some other callers in here, and Ben's going to join us so we can go back to the draft from over the weekend. Let's go to Hayden. Hayden, go ahead.
Well, Kevin, certainly no fan of Mayor Bowser, but I got to give her credit. This is a great deal for the city. It's going to revitalize that area. But is this the death of outdoor football in DC? Has that been confirmed? Is it going to be an indoor stadium?
It's going to be a domed, or what they're referring to as a roofed stadium, but it's not retractable. Retractable's a much greater expense. This is going to be a covered stadium. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that is the one negative. I mean, we're watching the NFL become the Arena League before our eyes.
I mean,
it is what it.
It is what it is. I mean, when you spend $3.6 billion to build these things, you can't have them available for just 8 home games or 9.
No, I get it. This is a great deal for the city. He's putting up his own money. It's going to be a first-class facility. It's a part of town that we're all familiar with. It needs to be revitalized desperately. It's not going to be the same experience as you guys remember from your glory days.
No.
It's going to be a totally different one. But for the future of this city, this is a fantastic day to get them back inside of the district. I mean, and let's be honest, Kevin, the fact that they've got the quarterback fell in their lap will make it a heck of a lot easier to make it a much more grand opening when they open the facility in 2030.
No doubt. Thanks, Hayden. Appreciate it. Let's go to Ross. Ross has been on hold. Ross, thanks. Go ahead.
Long time no talk, Kevin. What's good in the hood?
Well, you just heard it. The RFK looks like, we're within 1 or 2 final steps away from it being a reality.
Haven't been this excited since like 20 years ago. I lost something that I'll never be able to get back, but we're not here to talk about that. Real quick before I get into the stadium, man, I'm happy for my boy Gabe Taylor. I hope everything works out with him. But I think if Snyder was owning the team, they probably would just give him a 53-man spot. But anyways, I was talking to Max, man, and I try to tell people all the time, I'm saying it's going to be a dome stadium, and they think it's going to be what we had at the RCA Dome, the Metro Dome, down in New Orleans. I'm like you mentioned, it's going to be a roof stadium, but it's going to be something that's going to be year-round. I remember when Josh Harris was about to buy the team, you had a guy from Philly on. You had him on before the NFC Championship game. Couldn't stand that guy. He's like, oh, Harris is all about the money. If you have an opportunity to make as much money as possible, why would you not take that opportunity? I think he's going to do a real good job of developing the land around the stadium. And I already gave my wife my 5 years notice. I said, when that stadium opens and the 2030 season kicks off, Washington's going to play at the Indianapolis Stadium because I'm a scheduled guy just like you. They're scheduled to play him in 2030. And then me and my buddy, who's not that much younger than you, Kevin, we're going to be up there, man. We got to be there for that season opener. It's got to happen whenever it is. We're going to be there. This is probably one of the biggest moments as a fan since I've been alive. And last time they won a Super Bowl, I was just barely alive. But your opinion, man, what can they do with that stadium or the development around it for you, Kevin, as a resident, that would make you really mad excited? And before I hop off, I'm not trying to bring up the name. Just go back to the Washington football team uniforms. I'm cool with the helmet.
I think they're going to do something with the uniforms.
I don't care about the name anymore.
I think they're going to do something with the uniforms. Thanks, Ross, for the call.
Please.
Appreciate it. I think they're going to do something with the uniforms eventually. Who knows? We might get something on that with something this year. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, in terms of what they need to do, I trust them. I'd love an area, a new area in town that ends up being a cool area. I think somebody mentioned earlier, maybe it was Ian, whether, it's Navy Yard or Chinatown or, the Wharf. I mean, all of the areas. This is a much bigger plot of land than what we're talking about because it's a much bigger stadium and a much bigger, acreage parcel of land, 180 acres. So it'll be great. But, I keep thinking about this and I'm like, it's going to be 2030. We have 5 football seasons to get through before that. And we'll get updates on how it's going, and there will be pictures, and there will be certainly when RFK gets raised, when it gets taken down, that will be a story when they break ground on the new stadium. All of that stuff will be cool in the moment. But in the meantime, what we really like, I really like games, seasons. And we got 5 more of those before they'll play in this new stadium. But still, it's nice to know that eventually that's where they will be. All right. If you're on hold, stay there. We've got a line open if you want to weigh in, 301-230-0980. Ben just texted me, and it looks like they're getting Josh Harris in sort of a group opportunity to interview him. So he may not be available. We'll see. If you want to weigh in on the stadium announcement earlier this morning with Mayor Bowser, Roger Goodell, and Washington team owner Josh Harris, 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So much happened over the weekend, sports-wise. I mean, we had two Caps games, a loss Friday night, a win last night. 3-1 series lead. They come home Wednesday night for Game 5. And it looks like it'll be Carolina in the next round because they have a commanding 3-1 series lead over the New Jersey Devils. The NBA over the weekend, I'm just not going to spend any time on it, but there were just all-time games. I'm not sure I've ever seen a closer buzzer beater than Denver and Aaron Gordon's dunk off the Jokic miss at the buzzer on Saturday night against the Clippers. And then you had the foul that wasn't called a foul in Detroit yesterday, and then they came out with the post-game saying it should have been a foul, and instead of it being 2-2, it's 3-1 Knicks. The Lakers are, I mean, it's been great all weekend long. The Nats had a great weekend. They took 2 of 3 from the Mets, and we had an NFL draft where, since we last spoke on Friday, Washington made 4 more selections. I went through those earlier in the show. Didn't even get to Shedeur Sanders and that drama from over the weekend. And Jeff Ulbrecht's son, the Ole Miss kid who played a prank on calling Shedeur to tell me he'd been drafted by the Raiders. Oh, man, when you're young, you do stupid things. But the big news today in our city is there's a deal between the team and the city to build a $3.6 billion project on the RFK parcel of land that will include a 65,000 seat domed, or they refer to it now, roofed stadium that will open in the fall of 2030. It will turn an area that is essentially vacant and blighted into hopefully a thriving part of the city. It will create jobs. It will generate significant revenue. The mayor did a really good job of presenting it today with Josh Harris and with Roger Goodell. And man, when you think about this particular mayor, when all is said and done, regardless of whether or not you believe what she believes in politically or not, and there will be moments that I'm sure people will say, yeah, that was not a good moment, but keeping the Caps and the Wizards in D.C. and bringing the football team back to D.C., these are the things that get remembered. These are the high-profile events that end up being the first couple of lines written about a mayor's legacy. All right, Little is on hold. Little, go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call. Shout out to Mad Max, too, man. I'm applaud about the situation with the stadium, man. A lot of these callers calling in, I'm almost sure they're from PG County. You know what I'm saying? I'm almost sure they are, man. But look, I'm going to change the subject a little bit, Kevin, because I'm going to tell you now, man, I'm also applaud about this young boy they got from HBCU, man, Jackson State, man. I'm telling you now, I don't know how this kid didn't get drafted.
Hold on
man.
for a second. You're appalled that the stadium's going into D.C.? I want to know why.
No, I'm applaud.
Oh, you're applauding
it.
You're applauding
Yes,
it.
sir.
Got it. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm
go
happy.
ahead.
I'm definitely happy about it, man. You know, I
Go ahead.
worked over the stadium in the 80s and the 90s, man. I also played in the RFK Field 23rd annual Turkey Bowl game. See, all that's going to come back.
Who'd you play for?
All that's going to come back. I played for Baloo.
And who'd you guys play in the Turkey Bowl that year?
We lost the Coolers. They had a tight end, 6'4", Sims, that played for Virginia Tech. Sims, right now, he's a correctional officer guard over there at Alexander Detention Center.
Yeah.
Adult Detention Center, Sims.
Right.
He was a hell of a tight end.
RFK had that Turkey Bowl every year, and going way back, you remember, I'm
There you
sure,
go.
too, the city
1980.
championship game between the public school.
1980. I had to cover Sims. He burned me a couple of times because they beat us 22-12. But I had a safety in that game, don't care.
What did you want to say? What did you want to say about the kid from Jackson State? You're talking about the undrafted free agent, the safety.
Man, when you see this kid play, man, it's gonna be some goosebumps hit you, man. Because this kid moved just like Sean Taylor, man. I'm telling you now, the kid.
Well, Sean Taylor's brother was signed. You know that. His much younger brother Gabe was signed as an undrafted free agent as well.
I didn't know that, but I know about this kid they got from Jackson State, man. The kid is fast, quick, and he can lay the hammer. Hey, man, God bless y'all. Stay up, man.
Thanks,
Let's
Little.
go.
Appreciate it. Let's go to Bob. Bob's calling from Ocean City. Bob, go ahead.
Hey, a little bit south of there, Kevin. I don't know if it's my birthday, but I'm pleased to announce that he spent the money in town. And yes, I was at the Eastern St. John's game in the early 60s.
Right.
55 years over either RFK or over there in Landover. I would come back if I'm alive at 76, bicentennial for me, maybe, to come back to sit in the end zone if I'm alive and have a privilege. This man has made a big money commitment. He'll build it right. The mayor will give everything the city needs to have the sports, have the fields, have the indoor gymnasiums, whatever they need. The big picture is we'll be playing in D.C. We'll have a great time in D.C. It'll be a covered stadium. It won't be a retractable roof, won't be a retractable field, but that's what they can afford for that kind of money. Think about this, Super Bowl in the future, maybe Olympics in the future. Keep on reaching for a higher step on the ladder. That's what this ownership has given us all. It is a wonderful day all the way around. They have to spend money to get the tax base to keep money. Yes,
right.
It'll offend to some of the people, but they'll figure it out, Kevin. It's a great day, Kevin. Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, Bob, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go to Billy in Chantilly. Billy, go ahead.
Kevin, if I'm dreaming, don't wake me up. I can't believe how fast this is all coming together for this organization after battling for 20 years and wanted to quit on it and not be involved in it because it was so atrocious. And now to have an NFC championship, probably the best quarterback that's ever played in the NFL, and a stadium in town, it's just, if I'm dreaming, don't wake me up. The next cherry on the sundae is going to have to be changing the name. And that hopefully that's under consideration.
How many playoff wins do they have over the next 5 years before we move into the new stadium?
In Landover?
Yeah.
I'd say probably 15. 13 to 15.
15 playoff wins in Landover. That's home field advantage a lot. That's 5 years of home field advantage. But that I don't even think that's possible to play 15 playoff games over 5 years
probably
at
wouldn't
home.
be.
Yeah. All right.
If you were wild card games, if you had 5 years of wild card games, you could probably get there.
How
And we're
many
not gonna do that. We'll probably go on
new Lombardis do we have moving into the new place?
I'd say 5.
Yeah, okay.
Conservatively,
I'll take
5.
one right now, but the key is Jayden would be in year 7 when we open up the new stadium and he plays in there for the first time. Thank you,
If I'm
Billy. Let's
dreaming,
go
don't wake me up, dude.
Let's go to Rick. Rick in DC. Rick, go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. I got to tell you, I bought a season ticket out there at Northwest Stadium the last year that Snyder was the owner, and I held my nose when I did it. But I'm glad I've held on to that season ticket now for the last couple of years, and I look forward to the new stadium. It is a great day. But I tuned in a little late, but I don't understand how Billy from Chantilly would spoil the day by thinking about bringing back a racist and incendiary name to the organization. The Washington Commanders, that's fine by me. I would prefer the Washington football team, but however, saying that name has no business coming back to this city. I'm sorry.
Well, first of all, Billy actually just said
people-
a change of the name. Secondly,
A change
it is
of-
a
so we
very
know what that
complex
change
and
of the name
debatable
would mean.
subject as to what the name means, because overwhelmingly Native Americans, which are the only people I care about in terms of their response to the name, do not think it's terribly racist or insensitive. Thirdly,
Well, I disagree. I disagree
thirdly,
with
it
your
is an
opinion
issue
on
that
that.
is still a massive issue with the majority of the fan base. With that said, I think that name is gone. I don't think it's ever coming back. Whether or not they will do anything else with the name, my guess is they won't, because I think the team's going to continue to win and attract new, younger fans. I do think they will do something with the uniforms.
That's fine. Just keep that old name, keep it buried, stick a fork in it.
Well,
Because we
that's
don't
your
need
that's
to
your
pull-
opinion, but you see the problem with the mic drop. It's dictionary defined as insensitive or pejorative or even racially insensitive. Is that you're not understanding how deep and how complex and how debatable this name has been over the years. It's not as simple as that. If it were as simple as that, then Native Americans themselves would get rid of the name in a lot of the high schools where the name still exists. But thanks for the call, Rick. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to try to sneak Ben on here at the end of the show. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We're also streaming now. All right, 10 to 1. Hoffman streams 4 to 7 on the Team 980 YouTube page. Just hit the subscribe button and hit the like button for us.
All right, DC Mayor Muriel Bowser's office and the Washington Commanders have announced a deal to bring them back to RFK. The team will be contributing $2.7 billion in funds, the biggest private investment in NFL history. The Caps got the big win in Montreal last night. They bring home a 3-1 series lead. Andrew Mangiapane with the game-winning goal. The Caps win 5-2. They will meet again on Wednesday at Capital One Arena. Coverage at 6:45 on 106.7 The Fan. The Nats had 2 big walk-off wins this weekend, one on Friday and one yesterday, beating the Mets on a throwing error that allowed Luis Garcia to reach first and C.J. Abrams to sprint in from second to lift the Nats over the Mets 8-7. They close out their series at 4:05 pregame at 3:35 on 106.7 The Fan. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1, and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
Couple of other quick things about the plan. So, council approval sometime this summer, as we talked about our guest. Planning for housing, parks, recreation, summer, fall of 2025. Stadium site groundbreaking in the fall or winter of 2026. I would imagine that's late this fall, winter of 2026. Early 2029, Plaza District groundbreaking, summer of 2030, Sportsplex ribbon cutting, and the fall of 2030, the stadium opening. Ben Standig is with us. You were there. We watched it. We listened to it. Just your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's hard to not think about the journey to this point. I mean, obviously, Dan Snyder was trying to get to here, and for all kinds of reasons, many his own fault, no chance. Got Matumbo'd all over the place. And then with Josh Harris on board, this thing has moved, I think, somewhat rapidly. And here we are. It's not at the finish line. As you just said, the city council still has to approve. And, I think there's still some questions how that's going to go, although the mayor's office feels pretty confident about that. So, yeah, I mean, to see this day, and then, they bring out Joe Gibbs, John Riggins, Darrell Green, then the new regime is here with Dan Quinn, Adam Peters. Yeah, I mean, it's really, quite remarkable. It almost kind of works out perfectly in that regard, that it's that Super Bowl era and this new era. I kind of forget what happened in the middle. So yeah, pretty big day, but yeah, we'll see where this goes.
What struck me actually is in watching it, but you just reminded me to say something about it. When Ted did the thing with, about Virginia, there was a glee and an excitement level that was not shared by many of his fans and many in the city. Today, there was an excitement level that I think is shared pretty much across the board with the team's fans, with the city. Sure, there will be people that will push back, including probably members in the city council and, the NIMBYs and some of these other public, protest support groups against it. But just the overall vibe of this versus the one that we had about Virginia was just completely different. All right, let's talk some football. I haven't talked to you since Friday about what they did over the weekend, so give me your thoughts on the players they selected, and then maybe update everybody on just what they added after the draft, because they only had 5 players that they picked.
Yeah, look, I mean, going into this, the whole process, my thoughts were what they needed in some order: edge rusher, corner, speed on offense, help the offensive line, check those boxes except for the edge. And, part of what was interesting about this team going into the draft was they had at least papered over all their concerns, I would say, in free agency. I think they still, have to look at, can it get better with the edge in terms of free agency? But, I think it's hard to argue. McConnerly and Amos in particular are pretty impressive prospects. I know that Adam Peters said they could have easily taken Amos at 29, and whether you want to believe that or not, like, he was projected in that range by a lot of public analysts. So that seems like a pretty good value based on that. And again with Jaylen Lane, with Kane Madano, the linebacker. Like, Madano was the fastest linebacker at the combine. Yeah. Lane runs a 4.34. Like, this group needed speed on both sides of the ball. So I think look at a basic level in terms of like concerns and needs. I think they addressed almost all of them, and now you put them on the field and see what happens. So you can't do everything. They didn't trade back, but again, to get the 2 picks that they got at the top, I understand why they ultimately went with the player versus getting more picks.
At this point, what's going to come out of this offseason, free agency and draft, is whether or not they improved enough defensively. Right?
Yeah, no question. I mean, look, yeah, the offense is what it's got the bigger help with getting Larry Tunsil, Josh Connerly, Deebo Samuel. That side got much more of the help. Defensively, what was the biggest move? Javon Kinlaw, obviously getting Amos here, but they lose Jeremy Chin. They don't really add like an athletic edge guy. So yeah, I think there's still some questions on defense. I believe that, they think that they've improved the run defense with some additions like a Dietrich Wise and just overall the players that they have, maybe better fits for what they're trying to do there. But yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, you still have to contend with the Eagles. All the 3 teams in the division have, elite wide receivers. Do they have enough there? Not just in terms of the pass defenders, but the pass rush. You got to be consistent to get those quarterbacks, off their mark and hurry. And, I think that's a big question as to whether they've done that. But yeah, ultimately how this defense looks, and we won't get a real feel for that until, training camp preseason at a minimum. But yeah, I think without question, it's a big deal. And I would say for me at this point, based on what they've done, I think Daron Payne and Johnny Newton, but Payne in particular, if they're really going to have a surge on defense, I think that the 22 version of him has got to show up, because, he was a Pro Bowl player that year. He got the big contract. John Allen's now gone. They didn't add sort of an obvious headliner at the edge. They need that guy to be a Pro Bowler. And if he can, then we may be talking about a much better defense. If not, then yeah, we'll just have to see what they can do.
All right, got to run up against a hard break. Thanks for working some time in. I know you're busy down there. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, man. See ya.
Ben Standing, everybody, at Ben Standing on X on Twitter. All right, that's it. We're wrapped for the day. Back tomorrow. We'll catch up on a lot of things we didn't have time to catch up on today. Chris Russell's next.